Welcome to my video lecture series in web development using Vue.js. This is Professor Janice Raymond Tan from the College of Computing and Engineering. For this video lecture, we will cover the topics about list rendering. Throughout this video, we will discuss all about the v-for directive, maintaining state, array change detection, displaying filtered or sorted results, v-for with arrange and a template. List rendering is one of the most commonly used practices in front-end web development. Dynamic list rendering is often used to present a series of similarly grouped information in a concise and friendly format to the user. So the v-for directive is used to render a list of items based on an array. The v-for directive requires a special syntax in the form of item in items, where items is the source data array and item is an alias for the array element being iterated on. So here in our example, sa loob ng li, we apply the v-for directive. So the v-for directive here, tumatanggap siya ng item in items, which means item should be the name of your array declared inside your data model. So here, I am showing you the contents of our data model. So items is a property na dinefine natin sa loob ng data. Then sa loob ng items, for us to be able to get each and every element, kailangan natin gumamit ng alias. In our case, we used item. Can we use any alias for the every element? Yes, but I suggest you should use the plural or the singular form of your array name. So make it sure every time you define the array, use plural form. Let's say for example here, items is a plural form. Then for me to represent each and element, I use the singular form of items, which is item. Okay, so we're here in our example, starting from the first element. Okay, it will be represented by the alias item. Then the next element for the next iteration of this v-for directive, just like a for loop, we are able to get the second element. Notice here inside our items data or items property, every element of the array is considered an object. Why? Because they are enclosed in a pair of curly braces using the name value pair, which means the name is message followed by a colon, then the value is foo. Okay, so that is an object. Again, for us to be able to render or para ma-display po natin every element of our items array inside our li, we used v-for. So that we will be able to iterate for each element. Then for us to be able to display, we used a mustache binding here. Okay, so using the item as an alias, using the dot notation, we should be able to get the value using the name of the name value pair in every object element. So item.message here for the first iteration will return foo. Then the next iteration, item.message will return bar. So showing you in our sample output, you should be able to see something just like this one, wherein in our browser, foo and bar na nakuha po natin using the item as an alias followed by its name for the name value pair, because it is an object, we should be able to render our contents in li elements just like shown here in the given screenshot. Now to demonstrate to you the use of v-for directive for us to be able to render the contents of an array declared in our data model, consider the following code. So sa loob ng index.html natin, we defined ul, then li inside the ul, which means for every iteration of this particular li, you should be able to render something. Okay, so if you have 10 elements inside your array, 10 elements din magre-render yung li. sa loob ng UL. Now, let me show you the contents of the main.js. In main.js, I define items. So, items is an array because I am using here a pair of square brace. And inside our array, we considered elements such as message foo, message bar in the form of objects because here we have name and value pair enclosed in curly braces. So which means at the first index, we are able to get foo, and the next index, we should be able to get bar. Okay, so going back here in our index.html, again, using the v4 directive, use an alias, a singular form of your array name. In between them, use the keyword in, which means you are iterating each elements of the items array. So for every iteration, for you to be able to get the element, use your alias. And since we are dealing with objects as elements of items, I use the dot notation followed by the name of your property, which is message. So in this case, I will be able to get foo for the first iteration and bar for the next iteration. And it will be displayed using mustache binding. So let me show you our browser. So in our browser here, okay, we are successfully displayed foo and bar as elements of our UL element. Okay, so this should be an li and another li inside our UL element. So to prove that, let us inspect the code. Okay, so under elements tab of our inspector window, we should be able to get this particular output. So inside our UL, we have two li elements. The first li displays foo and the second li displays bar. And that is how to use v4 directive. Inside v4 blocks, we have full access to parent scope properties. v4 also supports an optional second argument for the index of the current item, just like this one. In this example, we will be able to display using mustache binding the content of parent message, which is a property of the data model. So this is the parent message defined inside the data model. And remember, the index always starts with 0 of the item within the items object array, which is also defined in the data model. So just like the items here, and the value of the message property of every item. Remember that the optional arguments in the v4 directive are aliases. Okay, so just like item and index, those are aliases. The first argument is always the element of the array, so this should be considered as the element of the array being represented, and the second argument is always the index position of the element within the array. Although you can change the aliases, I highly suggest that you use singular form for the array element name, and in our case, items is the name of our array is items, and always use index as the name of the second argument. This is to maintain code readability. So again, here in our example, we added index as the argument of our v4 directive. So in our previous example, we are able to put only or to use only the first argument, which is item. So what if, for example, we wanted to print also the index of the item being displayed? So we should put the second argument right after your item as the element name. So after the comma, okay, you can put the name of your second argument. Again, in our case, we used index to make it more readable. Now, inside our li element, okay, according to our sample code, we will print the content of parent message as a property of the data model, okay, which contains parent as its value. Then followed by index. Okay, so if we will iterate within the first element, so this should be 0 because index always begins with 0, followed by the item that message again. Item represents the element. In our case, the first element is message foo, and we have to get the first or the message property value, which is foo. So we are expecting that the output should be parent, just like this one, inside an li, hyphen the index position, which is 0, hyphen item.message, which is the first object inside our items array, which returns foo. So remember that each array element here is rendered within an li tag. v4 with an object. You can also use v4 to iterate through the properties of an object. In this example, we are able to access the contents of the name-value pairs such as title, author, and published at of our object property defined inside our data model. Whenever the v4 directive iterates in this li element, it checks for the content of the object using an alias. In our case here, we use value as an alias for every object element, okay, starting from title. In our case, we use the value as the alias, which represents every value stored in the object. Mustache binding is used to render the values inside the li element. That is why each object value is displayed in a bulleted list, just like this one. So each object value is rendered within an li tag. Okay, so that will be the v4 with an object. It works like the v4 directive applied in array, but this time, instead of getting each and every array element, we are able here to get each and every property of our object property defined inside our data model. Okay, starting with title. Okay, we will be able to retrieve how to do list in view for the first iteration, then followed by the author, Jane Doe, for the second iteration, and followed by the published at, which is the date being published, okay, using the value alias inside the pair of, or two pairs of curly braces, which is our syntax for mustache binding. You can also provide a second argument for the property's name, aka key. Okay, so in our previous example, we are able to display the values of each property of our object property inside our data model. Okay, so this time we will define, or we will display not only the value but also the name of the property. Again, going back in our data model, inside our object, okay, we have title as the name, how to do list in view as the value, and so on. Okay, so what if, for example, you want to print also the name aside from the value? So what we need to do is to define the second argument within our v4 directive. So this time, after the value, which is an alias for every value defined or stored in our object, okay, we will define a comma and the name as an alias again inside our v4 argument. Okay, so for each iteration, value will represent the first value inside our object, which is how to do list in view. Then the next iteration, or the name property, will represent the name or the property name of the first element of the object. Okay, which means when we execute this code, we will be able to see just like this one. We will print title, this one, okay, the property name, followed by the value, which is how to do list in view, followed by the author for the next iteration because of the name alias, okay, then followed by Jane Doe for the value, next iteration published at, and value is 2016 for 10. Always remember that this is only possible if you will be iterating to objects and not array. Maintaining state. Vue uses an in-place patch strategy when updating a list of elements rendered with v4, which means if the order of the data items has changed, instead of moving the DOM elements to match the order of the items, Vue will patch each element in place and make sure it reflects what should be rendered at that particular index. This default mode is efficient but only suitable when your list render output does not rely on child component state or temporary DOM state. Example, form input values. Providing a unique key attribute for each item being rendered by V4 will track each node's identity so that we can reuse and reorder existing elements of the object. To give you a hint so that it can track each node's identity and thus reuse and reorder existing items, you need to provide a unique key attribute for each item. In our case here, we added an ID attribute with unique value starting from 1 followed by 2. Okay, again, this is for us to maintain the state. By using vbind for each li, okay, using vbind for each li and key, okay, and providing a unique ID property of every value stored in the object as defined in the data model, we can maintain state. So here, we are binding item.id as the key attribute for each li element to be rendered so that each li element will have its own unique identity. So that is how to maintain state. Array change detection. Vue wraps unobserved arrays mutation methods so they will also trigger Vue updates. The wrap methods are push, pop, shift, unshift, splice, sort, and reverse. As you noticed, these are just the JavaScript array methods. So in our in this lesson, we will not discuss each and every method. Okay, so have a review of the Java array methods for you to be able to use this in Vue.js. Displaying filtered or sorted results. Vue.js uses computed property for returning a filtered or sorted array. In our example here, consider our div which uses v4, okay, which iterates for every even number, wherein even number is not an array but a computed property. So remember, computed property is used, okay, to return a computed or pre-processed values based on your given function body. Okay, so in this given example, instead of rendering the contents of the array named numbers, which contains numbers from 1 to 5, okay, a computed property named even numbers is rendered, which filters and gets only those even numbers in the array. So inside our even numbers computed property, we use filter, a JavaScript method, to filter each element of the array, okay, which accepts here a function, okay, accepting number as a parameter, wherein these numbers refers to the numbers array defined in our data. Again, based from our previous lesson, we should use this keyword if we are trying to access the properties of the data model inside our computed property. In our case, we access the numbers array. That's why we use this keyword. Now, the idea for every number, okay, for every number as an alias, okay, of our function or as a parameter, just like an alias, for every number inside the numbers array, okay, we will consider only those divisible by 2, okay, which means that is an even number. So every time these even numbers iterates, okay, for every number, okay, it will be passed in even numbers computed property, okay. So the first number is 1, it will be passed here, okay. If 1 is modulus 2 is equal to 0, then this will be returned. So since 1 is not divisible by 2, for the first iteration, 1 will not be rendered. For the next iteration, okay, number 2, let's say number 2 in even number. So we will pass 2 here, okay. 2 modulus 2 is equal to 0. That is true. Okay, that is why this number will be returned. That's why the first item to be displayed inside our Li element is 2 and followed by 2 because from 1 to 5, only 2 and 4 are even numbers. Remember, again, that in each iteration, each element is rendered in an Li type. In situations where computed properties are not feasible, example, inside nested V for loops, you can use a method. In the given example, nested V4 is used. The idea is to be able to display only those even numbers in every given set, since in our data model, we defined an array named sets having array are as also elements. Okay, for the given first element, numbers from 1 to 5 in the form of array is an element of the sets array, which means we are dealing with array of arrays. Notice that in the data model, we find or define sets as an array which also contains arrays as its elements, which means at index 0, we can access numbers 1 to 5. Always remember that when dealing with nested V4 loops, computed properties, just like the previous example, is not feasible. That is why methods as another property of our view instance, just like this one, is used having a method named even, which accepts an array as its parameter. So for example, in every iteration of this Li element having V4 directive, we are able to pass here set, okay, as an element of sets which contains numbers from 1 to 5 and 6 to 10 for every iteration. The idea is to return using the filter function only those even numbers within the array, just like the previous example. Based from our example, for every set, which is an array within an array named sets, we will loop again by using li tag and will call the even method to filter only those even numbers. Note that every even number that will be returned will be rendered in a separate li tag. So this will be our output. For the first iteration of li, okay, we will be able to move through each elements of the first set from numbers 1 to 5. So this will be rendered repeatedly, okay, until it finds all even numbers for that particular set. Okay, then rendering in separate LIs. Okay, so that's why in the first iteration of the UL having set, which is numbers from 1 to 5, we will loop again for numbers 1 to 5 and check each and every number if that is an even number. If that is an even number, we will render that in an LI. Okay, if that is not an even number, it will not be rendered in LI. Again, for the first iteration of the UL, we are able to get 2 and 4. Second iteration for the second set, 6, 8, and 10 should be our output. And that is how to implement methods if computed properties are not feasible. For example, in cases just like using nested V4 loops. V4 with a range. V4 can also take an integer. In this case, it will repeat the template that many times. Notice that in the given example, we are able to display numbers from 1 to 10 using the V4 directive. Additionally, what is defined in the data model is just the title and not number. Okay? Vue.js automatically provides the default value for number since a range is applied for every iteration which begins from 1, okay, the default value, until 10. Increasing the value of 10, of course, will also update the display in the browser. Let's say, for example, we define here 100. It will display 1 to 100. So that is how to use V4 with a range. V4 on a template. Similar to a template VIF, you can also use a template tag with V4 to render a block of multiple elements. In this example, we are not just rendering li element for every iteration, but we use a template just like here, okay, in order to render li inside a D the div element. So just like this one, applying a simple styling and additional button elements below each li. We use templates so that we can render a group of HTML code inside the v4 directive, just like what we have discussed in the previous lesson. Remember also that template serves as an invisible wrapper. That is why it will not be shown in the HTML document. So in our example here, inside our template, okay, we use v4, okay, to iterate for every item inside our items element defined in the data model. For each iteration, instead of just rendering li, we use the div element. Inside our div element, we applied simple styling. And inside that element, which is a div, we defined the li that will serve as the bulleted list. And within our li, we are able to access item.message. Okay, remember, if everything or any node within your root element wherein you apply the v4 directive, that particular alias, just like item, will also be will still be recognizable, which means in our example, even the deepest element inside your HTML code, as long as it is enclosed within a v4 directive, your alias will still be accessible inside that element. So again, in our example, within our template, we have div, within our div, we have li, and within that li, we are we're still able to access the item as an alias. Okay, so again, after the alias, we are able to display also or render also a button. So our output will be just like this one. Okay, for every iteration, we access the foo, okay, which is the item.message for the first iteration. We applied some styling within a div, okay, and a button. Okay, so as you can see here, foo and click our li and buttons are within a given div with the background color yellow. In summary, we can say that list rendering is one of the most commonly used practices in front-end web development. Dynamic list rendering is often used to present a series of similarly grouped information in a concise and friendly format to the user. v4 directive is used to render a list of items based on an array or an object. Applying a unique key by using v-bind directive in every element rendered using v4 directive will help maintain states of array elements. We can apply v4 directive with a range and template. For this lesson's activity, use the given code of the product app from the previous lesson as a starting code. Add the code so that the app will produce the given output. As you can see here, we are able to produce details and sizes which are rendered using v4. Consider the given view instance that includes properties such as details and sizes, which are both arrays. Use ul and li for rendering the contents of the given arrays in the HTML page. Post the link of your working code in the week 4 channel of our MS Teams using your account created in the given link. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. For questions, feel free to post your queries in our group chat. In our next video, we will discuss all about event handling. So don't forget to visit the links in the references section for more information about the topic. See you in the next video.